Inquirer Sports, where fans can read, watch, and listen to their favorite reporters and columnists. Go to theinquirer.com/sports, and we know that we love the Uncovering the Birds podcast.
Always a good thing.
From our man, Jeff McClain. Jeff, good morning.
Good morning, John. Andrew, how you guys doing?
We're doing good. We're getting set for the second Super Bowl for the Birds in 3 years. I know that you go and cover the Super Bowl every single year regardless of the teams, but I know that you don't like to make yourself the story, but it's got to be pretty cool that it's the team that you're covering second time in 3 years for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess this is why you do the job, right? You want more eyeballs on your stories, on your listening to your podcast. So in that regard, absolutely. And I guess it's our Super Bowl too. When it comes down to it.
I'm looking forward to it, Jeff, because in the coverage that you're going to provide, among others, the idea of comparing and contrasting the team that they're bringing to the big fight this time compared to the one that came 2 years ago. And I'm anxious to hear from you is how much better do you believe this Eagles team is suited for this stage this time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's funny that 2 years ago the Eagles were the favorites, and this year they're not. And you could arguably say that the Chiefs aren't as good as they were 2 years ago. So it's a little interesting to see how that's playing out. I think the reason why maybe is because the quarterback's not playing as well coming in as he was 2 years ago, although, Jalen clearly had one of his best games of the year in the NFC Championship. But, they're definitely better on defense. They're definitely better at defensive coordinator. On offense with Saquon, they're definitely better at that position. There hasn't really been much change elsewhere on that side of the ball, so you could say they've upgraded. I guess the punter's not as bad, and we all know how that played out at that position.
Yes.
The kicker's a little shaky right now, same person, but I think they're a little better than they were 2 years ago.
Jeff, one of our questions today for the audience is what is the best version of Jalen Hurts for the 2024-25 Philadelphia Eagles? We've seen games this year where he threw 18 times. We saw the NFC Championship game where he threw 28 times and played well. But we've also seen him in the last time he played the Super Bowl play one of the best games of his life. So what is the best version of Jalen Hurts for this team?
I think we saw it last week, kind of a hybrid of the two. He's going to have to throw the ball clearly. He's going to have to make plays with his legs. He's going to have to be smart when it's time to throw the ball away, not hold on to it and take sacks. You're going to have to kind of live with some of the times when he can't get to his second or third reads. But I'd say that hybrid version. You're going to need to throw in this game. I just don't think that you can just ride Saquon the whole way. Although obviously they've done a lot of that this season, but in the Super Bowl it's different animal. If you look at the numbers, I understand history doesn't always play a factor into what's going to happen in the present. But there's only been one running back on a winning Super Bowl team to have run for over 200 yards, and that was Damian Williams, 17 carries, 104 yards in 2020. And they weren't winning. There wasn't because of him that they won the Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes more than anything, and I think Travis Kelce had a good game. That's typically how the way it plays out in the Super Bowl. You have good defenses. I think the teams that try and hammer on the ground, they kind of get lost in the weight because Andy's going to come out throwing it unless the Eagles, and the chess match there is going to be interesting because Vic's going to want them to compel them to run it. And if you remember 2 years ago, they came out running in the second half. And that played a huge factor in them winning it, but it wasn't like it was like they were pounding the ball on the ground. So you have to be smart. It's going to be really, really interesting to see that chess match, and obviously on the other side of the ball too, with Steve Spagnuolo and Kellen Moore, and how he's going to blitz Jalen Hurts. We know it's coming. The question is, how's he going to do it? Really interesting game. I think it's going to be a good, close one.
Jeff, if I said to you, pretend that I'm your editor for a minute, that your worst nightmare in life.
Don't trust John.
And I said to you, Jeff, leading up to the Super Bowl, you're only allowed to write about one side of the ball for both teams. Where are the more interesting stories?
That's a good question.
See, I could be an editor. See, Jeff?
Well, I think I think the Eagles' offense is intriguing because those questions I just raised about, what are you going to do with Saquon? yeah, they're going to run it. I mean, this is the formula. They have to kind of stick with it, right? You can't just say, okay, we got to the Super Bowl doing this thing and not do it. Again, it wasn't necessarily what they did in the NFC Championship, right? Because Jalen they threw it a little more, but that Washington defense is not good. This is different. Kansas City, I wouldn't say it's the greatest defense. They're not as good as the Eagles' defense, but they have ballers over there, right? And they have a really good defensive coordinator, and Jalen's going to have to get to his third reads. He's going to have to be smart against the blitz. I mean, the O-line's going to have to be on its P's and Q's against sim pressures and against overload blitzes. I mean, Saquon. Spagnuolo has it all, right? I mean, he'll dip into that bag pretty deep, and they're going to have different looks. So I thought Kellen Moore had one of his better game plans, play calling. The design was there. If they could do that again, in 2 weeks in New Orleans, the Eagles could be having their second Super Bowl.
The last 4 seasons with Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts have not been short on storylines. And we're not just talking about on the field, right? All kinds of actions and drama. But you can't ignore the winning percentage for both of them, and you can't ignore the fact that they're in 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. What would a ring next Sunday do for their status or their legacy, Philadelphia and beyond? Because you know how people talk about the two of them, not always in the best light. But a Super Bowl ring and 2 appearances in 3 years, you can't ignore that.
No, absolutely. I mean, it cements their legacy. You win a Super Bowl, no one can take that away from you. And the fact that they've been to 2 of the last 3 is quite noteworthy as well. So, yeah, I mean, Jalen, look, you got to give him a lot of credit. He was really struggling coming into the last game. I wouldn't say critical. I've just pointed out the way he's played and the issues that he's had within the offense. I think some of it does fall, the issues there, some of it does fall on Kellen Moore, some of it does fall on Nick Sirianni. But, I mean, that offense is set up for Jalen to succeed, right? I mean, let's be honest, right? You have the best offensive line in the NFL. You have probably the best wide receiver pairing in the NFL. You have the best running back in the NFL. You have a top 5 when he's playing and healthy tight end. I mean, right? It shouldn't be this hard. And that's what we saw last week, 55 points. They just demolished Washington. So when they're playing at a high level, they can do it. When he can throw it, they can do it. In terms of their relationship or whatever, obviously John threw another log on the fire with the straitjacket comment. I did think he was kind of kidding to some extent. I also does speak to, though, how he feels probably a little bit about the way he's been used this season. But to his credit, and he keeps saying this, I'm a winner. I don't care how it looks. I'm going to do what it takes to win. And I think he has done that for the most part. And maybe, it's tough for someone who's confident as he is. And look, Jalen's a good quarterback. He's got a lot of skills. He's got a good arm. He's one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL. He's got accuracy. It's just there are other issues that kind of plague him sometimes when he's out there in the passing game. And, of course, we all know what he can bring to the game with his legs. And this is a guy who played through a knee injury. And that hasn't been talked about enough because it just didn't look like it, right? But in terms of the quarterback and head coach, I know that could be like a narrative, whatever, that people will have heading into the game. But, this team, I've been around a lot of teams. I've been around championship teams. I've been around teams that have gone to the Super Bowl and haven't got it. I mean, they've gotten here because it's everybody. There's a really good vibe in that locker room. There's a lot of good guys in that locker room. And I think that does factor into having a championship caliber team.
Jeff, I've told Andrew I've been to a ton of Super Bowls, and New Orleans is my favorite venue. I think it's the best for fans to come to hang out, the scene. You've been to a ton of Super Bowls. I've met you at a lot of them. What do you think for the fans that are going? What are your thoughts about going down to New Orleans?
Yeah, no doubt. I guess I've covered 15, 16. The last time they're in New Orleans was 12 years ago, and Ravens versus the 49ers. And, yeah, it's the best they should have it there every year, in my opinion. Everything's walkable. For my purposes, that's huge. I'm out in shuttles all day. But I think for the fans too, they can just see. I mean, sometimes you'll see players just milling around, walking around downtown. You just don't kind of get that in a lot of these other cities because they put teams in these. They have to put teams in the facilities that are far away, or where the hotels are situated. Sometimes they don't have good downtown experiences or the capacities to do it. No, New Orleans is completely set up for this, and obviously it's a great town. Some of the best restaurants and cooks in the world. Obviously, you have the nightlife dynamic as well, which I don't know how much I can partake in that, but certainly the fans who are coming down can. And by the end of the week, it gets tough. I mean, there'll be a crush of people there. Certainly, the ones who are just coming in specifically for the game. To me, I enjoy the build up before that when it's not as hectic. But get outside. Don't go Bourbon Street. New Orleans has so much more than Bourbon Street. So much more. Frenchman Street, Garden District, Warehouse District. Keep going. Go Commander's Palace. There's just so many places that you can go in other parts of the city, which is some of the finest cooking there is, again, in the world.
See, now this is the insight that we go for, not just on the Birds, but also New Orleans. Jeff, listen, man,
Thanks,
we
Jeff.
appreciate the time as always. It's been a lot of fun all season long
We'll see you
talking
down
to you,
there.
and we can't wait to talk to you next week.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Talk to you.
Thank you so much for checking out our content on the 97.5 The Fanatic YouTube channel. Hope you enjoyed the video. And remember, you can always be checking the playlist. There may be something you missed from one of our shows during the day that you want to go back and check out. So every time you like a video, like it, subscribe to the channel, and you'll have that great content coming to you every single day. You're greatly appreciated.